There's a whole other branch of leadership when you're dealing with adults. It stems from a context. For example, in a university, the dean of a center, I want that dean to have ownership.
Ownership, that they own the whole process.
Correct. So when I hired you, I said to you, I'm only going to keep you accountable for two things: the quality of what you deliver to students and the economic viability of your center, okay? So the law dean or the school of business dean or the school of ed dean or the medical school dean, it didn't make any difference. When they were hired in my office, I told them ahead of time what I was going to hold them accountable for. But I also didn't take away that from them. So I didn't need to be a boss because I brought them there because they knew a whole lot that I didn't know. I'm not a lawyer. In oceanography, I'm not an oceanographer. Right. So by the time I got to Nova with nothing except land, yes. When I left the presidency in '92, which was 20 some odd years after being president all those years, I left feeling good about the programmatic quality of what we were doing, and the only debt we had was self-liquidating debt in housing, capital debt.
Gotcha.
And I like that.
Yes.
I like that. Now there's been the 6 presidents since
you, and they all have different styles, different methods.
Each one is different. Each one looked for rewards in different areas, and but they were different than I was, yes. But that was good,
yes.
Because the problems we faced when I got out were not the same problems of building programmatically, because the centers were now there. Yes. So the big problem that people had was, how do I get the resources to give them now a home?
Yes.
And distance education was one of those things that I started because I didn't have that's the only way I could have gotten the resources back into the system. So they paid tuition because they were all employed, and I brought professors to them.
So really was your vision letting them implement it, giving them ownership and accountability and empowerment to carry it out, and then holding them accountable for the results and the economic viability of
We met twice a month. All the deans reported to me.
That's
by the way.
Too.
They reported to me. So we met twice during a month, once on equalities, okay, and once on economic viability. And economic viability was given to everybody because we all shared the monthly finances. So everyone knew that was a style. It wasn't that I was better than they were. I had collectively been responsible for the economic viability of the university itself.
I love it. So, yeah, it sounds like you built a team, is what I'm feeling.
Absolutely.
I almost feel like I'm part of it back then.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I couldn't do what we did without them.
Yes. I mean, I feel that.
And the important thing in that situation is I could meet with them alone. If I was going to be critical of something, I wouldn't do it on those 2 meetings. During that time, I'd call them or send them a note, say, to make an appointment to see me for lunch. And we would meet for lunch and we would talk.
So you'd give them healthy, honoring, respectful feedback, it sounds like.
That's correct. That's correct. But the numbers spoke for themselves. So I didn't have to. I had a person in finance who gave the reports. Everyone got everyone else's report, including mine. So they knew what the president's office was costing and that it was an overhead. Because whenever I brought in any money, I brought it in because something was going on, but I wasn't in control of that.
Dr. Fischler, a lot of people may not have as big an organization as you did, but I do believe that it starts exactly with what you said. What is the quality that they want? What's the economic viability of what they want, no matter what their position? What advice can you give them on how to become a continuous learner of implementing that? If you had to leave them with a tip, what would that tip be?
They have to do what at least I think, if you understand that the culture of an institution starts at the top. This company is started by you, and you operated in a certain way. Depending on what that way is, they have to feel as though they have control over some piece and make a decision without having to go back and check with you. Otherwise, you're micromanaging.
Gotcha.
And I felt in a university that I couldn't micromanage because every one of them was probably better in the fields that they're working than I am. And therefore, I had respect for their knowledge and their ability to do it. And I didn't really criticize what they did and how they did it. So they might be using a different, because they've had different experiences than I did. And therefore, who am I to criticize? If they felt it was important for them to criticize 3 or 4 people in the presence of each one, then they did it.
Amazing.
That wouldn't have been the style I would have used. I would have had 4 lunches.
In terms of doing it.
Right.
And giving them the feedback.
And giving them the feedback. So I realized as I watched over the years that each dean is a different person, etc. And the beauty of that is that I was hoping that the deans would give the same respect to the people they're employing.
Gotcha.
And giving them feedback that doesn't embarrass them necessarily.
It's amazing.
Because you don't want them to be defensive.
Where did your ability to self-regulate, and I know years ago you took several classes that I know of, and you continually take classes. What is that within you that wants you to keep taking the knowledge, putting it in yourself, and then applying it? What can you leave with our folks, something that can spark them or ignite them, skyrocket them to having that kind of learning initiative?
Well, if you're in a learning environment, then if you don't take advantage of it, in fact, when I hire people that don't have their terminal degrees, I say, look, if I was selling suits, you'd want to get a suit wholesale. Well, I'm not selling suits, I'm providing education. So while you're here, you only have to give me 25% of the tuition and take the classes. So continue to learn till you've got the terminal degree. And I did that with a lot of people.
And yourself.
And myself.
Yes.
So you encourage them to understand that what you have as a learning environment, you hope it's good, and positively reinforcing the people that are here, and just continue to learn. And once it becomes part of you, then you just do it.
You just do it.
You just do it.
Well, and you make it sound so easy, and it's true. You do just do it, and I want everybody to hear that and hear it loud and clear, that you've got to make a decision, no matter what field you're in, that you are leading yourself first, and you have to take the responsibility, the ownership, and the accountability is what I'm hearing.
Sure.
You say, to begin, and to keep going with it, and keep growing.
In certain corporations, that person is a project manager.
Yes.
And he was working with a group of people. They have to collectively produce the product.
Yes.
And therefore, he can't do it without that.
Without the team.
Right. And if one is not doing it, the share of what his responsibility is, then it's affecting not only the person himself,
the whole company,
but the whole company,
the whole project.
Because there's right. So in most corporations, you find that there is an overhead There is an overhead, but the closer the overhead is to the product,
to the people that are doing it,
the people that are doing it, the more apt it is to be positive and helpful. But if you're up here near the top of the pyramid, then you got a long way to go. And above the product, if you look at the product and there's a pyramid, anyone above the production of the product is overhead.
Yes.
So you can't stay in business if the overhead is more than 50% of the product production. So you got to kind of balance this all out.
So I'm hearing your practical side really connected to your people side, and then the bottom line. And I think that's also very important for everybody to know. There's a practical side and there's a business side, and the marriage of the two together is key, critical. Any final words or any parting words you want to leave for the audience so that they can take their leadership to new levels?
Just develop a leadership style that you're comfortable with, that's positive in terms of the people you're leading. Reinforce positive things you see. If you see negative things, do that quietly, but you can reinforce positively the behaviors of the people that are working under you, and they become more productive, less hostile, and enjoy the reinforcement that's positive, and minimize the critical areas, and move through them slowly, but always look at the success criteria. If I had to change public education, I'd make time a variable, and I'd make reinforcement part of the time variable that I need in order to help each student succeed. And each student needs the time to learn, even though they learn at different rates and have different preferential styles. I would reinforce the positives and not punish them by giving them an F. I'd wait till the F doesn't exist any longer. There's an incomplete that may exist until the F or that particular behavior patterns get changed. So I think it's just important, and I think people respond better to feeling positive reinforcements rather than the punishing.
I subscribe to what you do. Thank you for being positive with me on the feedback that you give to me. So I really appreciate that, and it's been very helpful. And
I'm glad it's been helpful.
Yeah, and I thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today for the first People Tech Leadership TV broadcast. There will be one a month, and we look forward to posting these out so that everybody has access if you didn't get to the live broadcast. We look forward to speaking to you again next month, and thank you so much for attending today.
Thanks.
And thank you, Dr.
Thanks for asking me.
Thank you for coming.